Hi and welcome to Drummers Review. I'm Nolly, and today we're going to be doing a comparison of 4 different tom heads. Specifically, we're going to be looking at clear double-ply heads from 4 different brands. 2-ply clear heads are more or less the standard choice for most drummers out there on their tom batters. What they offer over a single-ply head is a slightly more attack-focused sound with reduced sustain and overtones. The heads that we're going to be looking at today are the Remo Emperor, Evans G2, the Aquarian Response 2, and also the Generator from relative newcomer to the scene Code heads. All of these heads have a pretty similar specification. They're all made from 2 plies of clear 7mm film. All of the brands also claim to have their own proprietary technologies that ensure better seating and durability of their heads. The only head that diverges from the trend here would be the Code Generator, which has a bonded edge around the outside of the drum head, gluing the 2 plies together for a more controlled sound. The kit that we're using today is our House Yamaha Recording Custom with 10, 12 and 16-inch toms set up. And on the resonant side of the drums, we're using Evans Genera resonant heads throughout the review. Price-wise, we have quite a spread here, with the Aquarians coming in at around £60, the Evans and Remos around £45, and the Code set coming in at around £30. So, let's listen to a few more sample clips and come back for some discussion afterwards. Unboxing these heads, they're more or less what you'd expect, with the exception of the Code being a lot heavier than the others, and we think that's to do with the steel hoop that they use. Seating them onto the drums, the Remo, Evans and Aquarian all fitted perfectly, albeit with a very slightly different feel. The Code unfortunately did have a major seating issue on the 12-inch tom, where there was a huge amount of play in there. We were able to tune it up with the aid of a tension dial, but we still found that it was very difficult to get any kind of note out of that particular head. Similarly, the 10 and 16 didn't seat quite as easily as the Evans, Remo and Aquarian that we had on test. However, we were able to get them on and they tuned up with relative ease. Starting with the Remo Emperors, these were the brightest sounding of the bunch. They've got a clear sound and probably the longest sustain, although there's a lot of overtones to them. These heads recorded very well with that extended high-end response and lack of mud, though from the player's perspective, the quantity of overtones there might have you reaching for a little bit of dampening. In stark contrast to that, the Aquarian heads were very dark and dry. It's a whole different world to the Remos. These heads had a very short sustain and minimal overtone. To me, these would be a good choice for those who want beefy, shorter tom sounds, perhaps rock or metal drummers that hit hard and will be able to drive them into the sweet spot. Moving on to the Code generators, these were much brighter heads than the Aquarians, much more in the same ballpark as the Remo, albeit with a much shorter sustain. The kinds of tones that we were getting from these heads were very articulate and attack-focused with a lot of stick definition, though the actual amount of note to them was quite minimal, especially on that 12 that had the seating issues. At softer playing dynamics, we felt like the sound here was a little bit synthetic, with a lot of just the plasticky sound of the stick making contact with the head rather than shell resonance and sustain. With that said, we felt like these heads didn't choke at higher volume levels, so we think that, similarly to the Aquarian, these would be good heads for heavier hitting drummers out there. Moving on to the Evans, these were the easiest to tune up, with a smooth and consistent feel. They seemed to come to life at a lower tension, which made for much more accurate tuning. These are quite dark voiced heads, though not as dark as the Aquarian, and at the same time they had a decent sustain, more in line with that of the Remo. But overall, we're talking about a sound that has a bit more upper mid attack than the Remo, and a little bit less on the top. I think that fat would be a good term to describe the G2s, and from the playing experience, these are very rewarding and satisfying heads to play. We feel like the Remo heads would suit players that are looking for clear and bright tom sounds, especially those that record a lot, whereas the Evans are more full sounding with controlled overtones for a cleaner overall effect. The Code and Aquarian heads would be a really good choice for those of you who are used to using a lot of dampening to get the kind of tom sounds that you like. The Aquarian would be the logical choice for those who want a really warm and fat sound, whereas the Code would be good for those who want pure attack. At £30, the Code heads are obviously a darn sight cheaper than the other heads that we have on review here. That seating issue is unfortunately a black mark against them, so we'd love to see that resolved in the future, especially because they seem to be offering genuinely cool and different sounds than are available from other manufacturers. At the other end of the spectrum, the Aquarian's price tag is a little bit tough to swallow. It might make it difficult for them to tempt away users of the Remo and Evans that are priced right about as you'd expect. We really hope you've enjoyed this tom head comparison, and we'd love to know what you think about these heads, so please leave us a comment. Don't forget to subscribe for more content, and I'll see you next time at Drummers Review.